When the smoke clears, I am the recovery plug. What's going on, everybody? Well, man, I hope everybody had a very, very Merry Christmas. I know that I did. I had a freaking blast. This Christmas was awesome. I was able to spend Christmas with my kids and my grandkids. It was freaking cool as heck. And man, I hope that everybody had just as wonderful Christmas as I have. And if you didn't, well, my brothers and sisters, you know what? Today could be that first day for you to start having, a life-changing experience. That for that, your life today could be a whole lot better than it was yesterday. Um, yeah, so I would like to, I always like to get my video podcast started always with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers. So, if you would, please, a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Alrighty, well, let's get started here. Well, today I wanted to get back to the book that I've been reading, and I want to read this. It's the part two of the book, and the chapter is called "The Courage to Change the Things I Can." And like I said from the beginning, when we first started kind of reviewing this book, going over it and stuff, that this book is really good book, man, because this book breaks down the serenity prayer, and it breaks it down in such a way that you really can relate to how this book is interpreting and how the author interprets the serenity prayer and in the fact that you in a sense have to look within yourself to find the serene place and the acknowledgement to say, you know what, I got no control over what happens in that realm. You know what I mean? I don't. And that realm seems to, you know, the outlook of that is that you only got control of what happens here in your mind and the actions that come out of that. And everything else that, you know, the your childhood traumatic experiences, the reasons that you may be in depression, or the reasons that you may be angry, the reasons that you may be addicted to drugs or alcohol, whatever that is, you have no control over that outcome to the present. You know what I mean? In other words, that's water under the bridge. And no matter how many times you try to change it, it already happened. You know what I mean? No matter how many drugs you use, or how many bottles of liquor you drink, or how many times you get mad, or how many times you isolate yourself, or how many times you just stay in this depressed mode, no matter how many times you do all of those things, it's not going to change the fact that it happened. You know what I mean? So in turn there, what you can change is the mentality and your actions that go forth from today present into the future. You know what I mean? And in other words, today could be that day that you start setting those healthy boundaries. You know what I mean? Setting those healthy boundaries are things that are going to be like so evident in staying in that positive realm. And for me personally, staying in the positive realm of recovery and positivity due to my addiction to drugs and my childhood traumatic experiences and PTSDs, all those things, I could stay stuck in the negative boundaries if I wanted to, but I choose not to today. And by the grace of God, that I was able to understand that through that serenity prayer and know how to know how and know the red flags of my life when those things are happening. If those red flags come up and if I'm moving towards those negative boundaries in the negative realm. And today I'm able to notice that, and I'm able to set those positive and healthy boundaries. And it begins with that serenity prayer for me personally, because that's what I do every single morning when I get up in the morning. Is I pray that serenity prayer, and I incorporate that into my meditation. And you know, it helps. It helps me personally, and that's why I do that prayer when I get my video podcast started. That's one of the first things that I like to do is recite that the serenity prayer, because that's the basis of where I'm going in my life. You know what I mean? And it keeps me reminded of where I've been and what not to do, in a sense. And because I don't want to be unhappy anymore. I don't want to be depressed anymore. I don't want to be mad anymore. I don't want to be addicted anymore. I don't want to be frowning all the time, crying all the time. I don't want to do any of those things anymore. I want to be happy. And I want to help as many people as I can come over to this realm of positivity and recovery that I can, because I figure that that's my due diligence, is by giving away what has helped me along the way to get here to this point. And, you know, one of the things is for me, besides doing this podcast, and one of the positive boundaries that I set for myself, and one of the positive things that I do, is I've been reading a lot of books. You know, I've never read, I hardly ever read any books at all, you know, at all, since probably when I was going to school. You know what I mean? I had, when I was in high school, and then when I was going to college, I had to read, obviously. So besides that and those types of situations, never did I have just a book, just to pick up a book and start reading it, you know, just by choice, and just to pass the time, in a sense. And that's one of the things that I like to call my my recovery arsenal. That's one of the things that I've incorporated in my recovery arsenal this time around. And I find it that it helps, and I find that it's a very, very positive thing for me personally in my journey of recovery and positivity. So what I want to do is I'm going to read a little bit of this book to you, and then it's not a very long chapter, but I just want to read it, and then go over it, and kind of, you know, pick it out, you know what I mean, and see how it reflects to my journey, and then we'll see if it reflects anybody's journey that's listening to the podcast. So here we go. Part 2 of the book, and by the way, the book is called The Way of Serenity. That's this book right here. Okay. Alrighty. It says here, Part 2, The Courage to Change the Things I Can. As we turn to the second part of the Serenity Prayer, I would remind you once again to be praying it every day, even several times a day, as you come along with me on this journey toward the peace and joy God wants for you. Praying the Serenity Prayer is a habit that will stay with you for life. Growing in spiritual knowledge without also growing in practical living faith treacherous for the soul. It is a way of dulling the conscience and hardening the heart. Have you ever had a minister or a priest who knew all the right answers and knew the Bible cover to cover, but treated people badly? I know I have. It can happen to any one of us. Clergy or laity, we can read piles of spiritual books, study the Bible, go to church, but never come to the deep personal relationship with Jesus that transformed our lives. And that is so true. I mean, let me just pause there for a minute. That right there is really true, because I know that I have been at times I would read, or I would go to church, I would listen to sermons, and as soon as I left church and had this whole thing at church and gone through the whole process of the groups and the eating and all of that stuff, and I would get back and I would leave, and then I'd go back to isolation as soon as the church was over, and I'd go get high. You know what I mean? I'd go freaking smoke me a bowl right after. And even sometimes I know that in my cocaine addiction days, I would be at church high. I would go to church high, and that was just how I coped with things. But let me move on. Okay, it says pray, pray, pray. This is the way to read this book. In looking at three elements of the first part of serenity prayer: serenity, acceptance, and acknowledgement of things we cannot change. We have turned them over and tried to understand their practical consequences for our lives. The second part of the serenity prayer also has three components: courage, change, and changeable things. We will examine these in some depth, but it would help to start with the sense of what we mean by each one. Courage or fortitude is virtue. It has recognized as such since classical times and was considered by the ancients to be one of the four cardinal virtues, together with prudence. I'm sorry about that. Justice and temperament. To them, fortitude is cardinal, in that it is central, a prime virtue on what other virtues depend. We often associate courage with warriors, and there is no doubt that the battlefield is one arena where courage may shine particularly brightly. But courage, especially in our day, extends far beyond war front trenches and battleships. It is practiced by mothers who have braved difficulties, even ridiculed, in their daily dedication to their families, by missionaries who often preach the gospel at great personal risk, or by young people who live by their ideals no matter what the cost. Changing things requires the courage to abandon the comfortable status quo of our lives in order to break into the unknown of what could be. It requires sacrifice, since nothing is ever accomplished without cost. Some people relish change, like my mother, who would have moved from city to city every year if she could, just for the adventure of it all. Others have a hard time changing anything and instinctively bristle at any suggestion. They are the altered things in any way. My father, for instance, would prefer never to have moved from our first home, and is happiest when he can stick with his daily routine. Sometimes, too, may resist change because of influence of other people. That is, some people who are important to us may not want us to change because it will adversely affect them. In this case, it takes courage to continue in our endeavors without losing resolve, but still maintaining a spirit of Christianity, charity. Change, as we know, is neither good nor bad. It is okay, let me read that again. It says, change, as we know, is neither good nor bad in itself. It has been said simplistically that a liberal is one for whom all change is good, and conservative is one who believes that nothing should ever be done for the first time. Neither of these stereotypes reflects the mind of a wise person who distinguished between good change and bad change. Improvement is our essential term for positive change. While we call a negative change a decline or a step backward in the state of things, change can mean growth or shrinking, progress or regress. A caterpillar changing into a butterfly is beautiful. A dead fish sitting for hours under the sun undergoes changes that aren't so quite pleasant. We should be eager to change all that needs changing, but suspicious of changing simply for its own sake. Making a humble commitment to changing what we can and should change requires an attitude of healthy realism. As we will see in the following chapters, accepting our real limitations while not allowing them to curb our enthusiasm is a sign of great maturity and a recipe for great fruitlessness. Man, that is that's the end of the chapter, and that is I don't know. It is for me in my let me put this down. Alrighty, well, man, that chapter for me, I can relate to that chapter in the sense that uh, I had to seek the change. I did, and if I didn't, it wasn't going to be good at all. You know what I mean? If I had not sought out change, I would have stayed in my comfort zone, and I would have stayed in my comfortability, and for me that was using, and 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 it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's really, really hard to change because nobody likes to, go through change. Because change can be, like they said, good or bad. And for me, it it meant going through heartbreak. It meant going through, being fearful of the unknown. It meant fearful of being alone, fearful of leaving what you were comfortable with, and not knowing how you were gonna find your next meal, how you were gonna find the next place to lay your head at night. Just many different things, and I was comfortable where I was at already, and I didn't want to move from that spot. But I knew that if I didn't have a change, that I would stay there and ultimately lose more than I had already lost up to that point. And you know, the way I started to change was I started getting back into my recovery community and into my faith-based community. And when I returned into the realm of positivity and into a realm that I knew that made me, I knew before from personal experience that the things I used to do when I was in my recovery and in my spiritual faith-based communities, I was happy. My life was going good. I had relationships with my kids. I had money in my pocket. I had vehicles. I had a house that I lived in, and I had work, and I mean it was great. It was a great life. And when it all got taken away in the flash of my eyes, in a sense, I could remember sitting there crying to myself and crying out to God, why? What did I do so bad in my life that I have to go through this stuff? And, the way I look at it now is I understand that, you know what? Maybe some part of what I had to go through is key into where I'm supposed to be moving forward, right? And for me, I didn't want to change jobs. I didn't want to change friends. I didn't want to change any of the routine that I had. But, as far as I'm concerned, I believe that my higher power, my spiritual connection to my God, He has other plans for me. He doesn't want me to be where I was at. Because if He did, I would still be there. And and to tell you the truth, when I had, just for example, when I had when I used to be in that life, and I had my business and everything like that, everything was going great. I had drive in that, and I loved going to work. I loved doing what I did. And this time, now to the present date, I don't want to go back to what I used to do as far as like my job and stuff like that. I don't have that drive anymore. I don't, and I don't want to be involved in something that's not going to make me happy, and that's not going to be of service or helpful to anybody else. And that's one of the things that I feel strong about this time is that I feel that my higher power has a new road for me, and that is, this is part of one of those things, is sharing on this podcast things that have helped me along the way to get to positivity and recovery. So I'm really passionate about that, and I want to help somebody else get out of that world of addiction, because I've been there and I've done that, and I've been in the tents, in the under the bridges, and in the motel rooms, in the bandos. I've been all doing all of that, and never did, when I was there, was it ever fun? Was I ever happy? I was always mad. I was always miserable, but I kept on doing something that I knew that was killing me. I kept doing that on a repetitious basis, and for me, that was using drugs, and that, and to be sane and know that you're doing something that's killing you, you're really not sane, because that's insanity. You know what I mean? And addiction is cunning and baffling, and you can talk yourself into staying there, and I did, man, on the daily basis. Was I talking myself into staying there all the time? But at the same time, I could always, under the underlining in my heart and in my mind, man, was I screaming to get out of there. I didn't want to be around there. I didn't want to do the things that I was doing, but I kept doing it. And why I was chosen to be able to finally get out of there, I have no idea. But I know this is that I'm not gonna waste that. I'm not gonna take that gift for granted that God gave me, because I asked Him. I flat out asked Him. One day I'm sitting in the park and had enough of that life, and I remember telling the girlfriend that I had at the time, saying, I'm tired. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not gonna deal with you, and I'm not gonna deal with anything else. And I'm finished. And I remember walking away from her that day at the park and crying to God, please help me get the heck out of this freaking life, because I don't know where I'm going anymore. All I know is that I don't want to do what I'm doing now. And lo and behold, watch what you ask for, because the next morning, somebody's knocking on my freaking door for some drugs. I go try to score the drugs for them, and I get busted. And I've been clean and sober ever since that time. After I got locked up, I hadn't picked up at all, and I'm grateful for that. And then when you ask to get out of that darkness, it's not going to be the way you want it to be. God's going to answer your prayer the ways He sees fit. And for me, He saw fit that I got out of there the next day. You know what I mean? I don't know why He chose me to be out of there the next day, and I don't know why He chose me to do these podcasts. I don't know why He chose me to go to meetings, but He's choosing me to do this stuff, and I'm doing what He's asking me to do. What I feel that He's asking me to do, because it's an inner thing. It's an inner spirituality within yourself that you have to find, and you got to pray and meditate about it. And I do that on a consistent basis. I do everything today as I did when I was in the addiction. In the addiction, I would do everything I could to obtain drugs and keep drugs, and on the daily basis, on a consistent basis. Never ever wasn't a day that I had to get up and not do it. I did that on a consistent basis. So that's how I'm approaching this sobriety and recovery and positivity. I'm doing it on a consistent basis. On the daily, I'm doing something every single day to keep myself engaged in my spiritual and recovery community. And I encourage you to do the same. And one of the things is just like this, reading books. And it's one of the things that I picked up. It's another weapon that I put in my recovery arsenal. That's what I call my things that have helped me along the way. I call it my recovery arsenal. So it's just another thing that I have in my recovery arsenal that I could pull out. That's another story that I got for somebody that may need to hear that part of the journey. You know what I mean? I got a lot of stories because I've been in recovery and in addiction for a very long time, and so somebody needs to hear it. And that's what the big book of AA and the NA books say, that addicts help other addicts get to the world of positivity and recovery, man. And the only way to do that is by sharing your story and do your due diligence of service work. And that's what I'm doing this for, is to help somebody else get into this world of recovery and positivity. But I hope I encourage someone today, and I will close with this. We'll close with the serenity prayer today. I always open up with it. Well, you know what? Let's close with it. And okay, please, a moment of silence. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, thank you for listening to my podcast today. I greatly appreciate it. At this time, if you would please hit that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, subscribe to my channel, because know this, at any time that you subscribe to my channel, that you're helping another homeless person, you're helping another addict, you're helping another person who's depressed, you're helping another person dealing with PTSD, you're helping another veteran just like myself. So you're just helping your human, man, and I hope that you subscribe to my channel and help me spread the word and do our due diligence of service work to share what has helped us along the way, and by giving it away. Again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I guess till the next time on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.